We are Allmade for printers. And this is education for better decoration. Let's go over decoration recommendations for Allmade's organic CVC fleece. Unlike our 100% organic French terry, which is not a traditional fleece backing but a French terry backing, the organic CVC fleece uses a traditional fleece fuzzy backing. And this is why we're using 35% recycled polyester in order to give that fleece stability as well as flame resistance for compliance. Because this is a CVC fleece, there's two things that we want to consider, both decorating fleece as well as the polyester content in the fleece. Now keep in mind, this does have a cotton face, which means it decorates much better than a traditional CVC that has polyester blended into its face. However, you can still get some bleed through and there's still some precautions needed to decorate it. For our lighter colorways, we had really good dye migration results. We also had some ghosting, however, which means that we want to use cotton HSA or cotton plastisol inks. For this, a great mesh is a lower mesh, like a 157 thin thread, even down to a 125 or a 110, if you're manually printing especially. You can use a stampinator to pre-press and or stamp flash that first base to get a nice soft print. For those lighter colors that don't have that dye migration, using that cotton white allows us to avoid any ghosting issues when hot stacking the garments when coming out of the dryer. Now for our darker colorways, we did have some dye migration that we need to deal with. And for this, we need to use some low bleed or blocker inks with water base. Because we still had pretty good results due to that cotton face, we don't need to use a plastisol blocker and then a low bleed on top of that or a poly white. So we can use traditional low bleed inks. Again, using that lower mesh range, 157 thin threads or down to 125, 110 allows us to get a good ink deposit. Using a stamp or a roller to pre-stamp or flash stamp that underbase also gives a great soft hand when printing fleece. Now this fleece does decorate very, very well, and if you have good off contact, good tension, and good mesh, specifically if you're using more of that open mesh area, like a thin thread, you don't even need to use a stamp, but it does improve your results. Also when printing water-based or HSA, no stamp is needed because the ink does a great job of matting down those fibers and it prints amazing. However, again, on those darker colorways, we do want to use a blocker or a mixed blocker gray or blocker black before we print our white and top colors in order to avoid that dye migration. When it comes to printing discharge water base on Allmade's organic CVC fleece, it actually decorated very well because of that cotton face. The only colors that don't really score well are the blues because blues have a traditional hard time of discharging. For any heat transfer applications, you use the same theory as screen printing. This fabric performed very well in heat tolerance, so there's no need for specific heat settings or not traditional transfer settings. However, on the garments that did have some dye migration issues, you might want to consider a lower cure transfer, whether it's DTF or traditional heat transfer, or a transfer that uses a blocker to avoid any type of dye migration. For DTG printing, fleece is traditionally more thirsty, so you're gonna have to increase your pre-treatment, but this decorated very well because of that cotton face. We got slightly better results using a heat press versus a conveyor cure because we're matting down those fibers, but both performed fairly well in our testing. We know your customers are gonna love this stylish, great fitting, and super soft organic CVC fleece. And we hope these decoration recommendations give you what you need to wow them on press as well.